Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Throughout the training this morning, I'm hoping that you'll feel free to chime in as we move along. I tend to be a presenter that likes to interact with the audience, so do feel free to chime in as we go through each of the slides and kind of chat a little bit. I think we can make it much more meaningful if everybody is welcome to interact. So do feel free to turn on your video and chime in as you feel comfortable. A little bit of background about myself. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology from University of Rockport, and I have a master's degree in social work. My life prior to private practice here at Clinical Associates was in higher education, where I was for 18 years as an administrator, as a student advocate and counselor, and also a professor. About 2 years ago, I made the transition to private practice here at Clinical Associates as the director of EAP services, so coordinating contracts with a variety of local organizations providing their employee assistance programs, but I also work as a therapist here. This webinar really is aimed at normalizing many of the feelings and reactions that many of us are feeling at this point in a very unusual environment. We haven't been in this space before. There really isn't a roadmap for navigating it, but there's a lot of similarities that many of us are encountering. And so this webinar is designed to normalize your experience as well as my experience as I'm moving through it with you. But it's also set to talk to you specifically about strategies and tips for maintaining mental wellness during times like this. While we haven't been in this specific environment before, we have been through difficult situations which have created many of the same feelings. So we have a lot of research behind it, even though we don't have a particular roadmap for this pandemic. Again, as we move through the webinar, do feel free to chime in. Again, I tend to be a more interactive presenter, and I think it makes it much more meaningful for yourself as well as for me, and a lot less painful for me. So hopefully some of the information that you'll be able to get from today's session will help you maintain some sanity during this unusual time. And I haven't used this platform before, so bear with me if I fumble around just a little bit, getting familiar. I want to start just by talking about a little bit of terminology, and I go backwards here. Whoops, sorry. Common terminology, and the only reason I include this is because it's a little bit of a pet peeve because we're using a lot of wrong language. There's 3 different levels of isolation or social distancing that come with a pandemic such as this. The first one is social distancing, which is really a way to keep people from interacting closely or frequently enough to spread an infectious disease. Then there's quarantine. This is where somebody has been exposed to an infectious disease and they're prevented from interacting with others to help keep others healthy. Then there's isolation. That's if somebody is infected, really keeping their distance from all individuals, including those in the household, to prevent the spread of an illness. At this time, most of us are dealing with social distancing, which is a significant change for many of us in our day-to-day interactions and routines. We might be out of work, we might be working from home, our children might be running around, our pets are now involved in our day-to-day work lives. There's limited opportunities to socialize and be with family and friends, limited opportunities to engage in typical activities that bring us together. And there's a significant interruption to our day-to-day, which creates a lot of uncertainty. Some of the typical reactions that we might be feeling at this point include all of the ones that you see on the screen, plus several more. But you might be dealing with some frustrations, and that frustration comes from the fact that your day-to-day is interrupted. You don't have that typical routine. You don't have your typical places that you go, people that you interact with, etc. You might be feeling some depression or hopelessness that, man, this is just never going to end. You might be feeling fatigued. Again, that's because of a break in your typical routine, maybe a little boredom sneaking in, which definitely leads to fatigue as well. You might have some appetite changes, weight loss or weight gain. Many of us dealing with the quarantine weight gain, the eating all of the snacks at one time. There might be some difficulty concentrating. Again, you're in a different environment, perhaps doing work or trying to get some things done, but you're finding that your mind is wandering all over the place. You might be turning to substances as a way to cope in this time frame. Maybe it's because your children are home and you feel the need to use substances, or there's a variety of other reasons why we might turn to substances during a time like this. You might be experiencing increased anxieties and worries, perhaps some fear related to your own health status, questioning what are you going to do if you become ill? How are you going to work? How are you going to maintain the household? How are you going to do the things that you normally do? You might be concerned or worried about the status of others with whom you may have been in contact. Perhaps it's a parent or a child. Maybe you're continuing to go to work and you're coming home worried about infecting others within your household. You might be worried about finances. Many of us are certainly experiencing challenges with finances, particularly as unemployment continues to rise, and challenges with getting through to unemployment and getting that set up. Because of those challenges with finances, there might be a sense of fear or worry about getting necessities that you need, groceries, personal care items, etc. And that could be because of not having the financial means to do so, or it could be fear of going out and obtaining those items, or not being sure how you could secure those safely. You might be questioning, how long is this going to go on? Is this the new normal? We have a job or a school to return to. We know that schools are now closed, so that's been answered for us. And what it looks like going forward, we don't know, which again creates some of that anxiety and worry. You might be struggling with feeling trapped at home. And I'll mention it now and I'll mention it later. Sometimes if we just change our language a little bit around that, instead of feeling trapped at home, we could say, I'm safe at home, which creates a different emotional response than trapped or stuck. You might have some difficulty completing tasks, and that's, again, directly related to maybe working from home or the new normal, your daily disruptions, your day-to-day routines being impacted. You might be homeschooling. Your children might be home, and you're having difficulty finding balance between work and home life. We'll talk about some specific strategies for managing those things as we go through. And so this is one of those points that I'd like to throw it out to you, the participants, and why? Why are we feeling some of these things? Don't be shy now. Help me out. Any brave souls out there? All
Why
right.
are we feeling what way again? Sorry.
That's okay. Why are we feeling all of the things that we just went through, that loneliness, that isolation, depression, anxiety, worry, fear? Why are we feeling that way?
Because all of this is out of our control.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, we don't have control over the situation. We're being told how to manage it.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Why else?
There were a couple answers in the chat space. Someone mentioned uncertainty.
If I open that up, I can actually read those things. Yeah, absolutely. Uncertainty leads to feeling this way. The news, certainly reporting only the scary, negative things. And I love that somebody pointed that out, because I just engaged in this conversation with a close friend, actually, recently, who was saying that, well, in Steuben County, there's 200 and whatever cases there are at this point. It's like, okay, but the news isn't reporting how many have actually recovered. So we don't actually have 200 and whatever cases active in Steuben County. We have maybe less than 75. That changes the conversation a little bit. If we look at less than 75 versus 200 and some, we might feel a little bit more safe or a little bit more secure in that there's 98,000 people in this community. So absolutely, the news only reporting that negative, scary stuff helps us to continue feeling some of the ways that we just talked about. Debbie, thank you for sharing. Change is difficult. No matter what, any circumstances, pandemic aside, change is not natural for us. We don't like change. Our brains don't like change. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. Barry's starting to realize that we won't be going back to normal, quote unquote. Yeah, our normal might look a little different going forward. But the good news is we're adaptable. We're very adaptable as humans, and we'll talk about some of those things as we go through this training to share some ways that you can make it more normal or help yourself adapt to the changing situation. All of the things that you mentioned absolutely lead to the previous 3 slides and all of those things that we're feeling. But in addition, we're also hardwired to feel this way. Our brains our brains like to know what's going on in the world. It likes to recognize patterns. We are hardwired for certainty and control. Somebody mentioned, Barry, I think it was you, we have a sense of loss of control at this point. Right, our brains don't know how to deal with that. Additionally, we're provided with too much time to think if we're working from home or we're out of work. Man, there's a whole lot of time for our brains to be racing, going off into crazy different locations. There's a concept called cognitive dissonance. This is where our brain doesn't like for 2 things to be true at the same time. So during this pandemic, we're on this one hand telling ourselves that we're safe, that we're fine, we're doing the things that we can do to keep ourselves safe, but then we've got the other side where the news is telling us that it's really scary, you're at risk, and all of these crazy negative things, and your brain is trying to weigh out, am I safe, am I not safe? And your brain, our brains, really try to move towards one meaning or the other, but it can only focus on one at a time. And so we might drift towards that negative stuff and really buy into what the news is sharing with us, and so then we become more panicked, more nervous, more scared. We might fear the uncertains, all of that. But then in those other moments, we might drift to the other side and say, but I'm okay. I can get used to this new normal. I kind of like working from home. This isn't so bad. But then there's going to be those times where you balance that. In one moment, you might be fine. The next moment, you're not. Uncertainty in the unfamiliar creates a stress response for us. And that's back to that perceived loss of control in the situation. That perceived loss of control sends a flood of cocktails through our body that creates the fight or flight or freeze response, which is part of the stress experience. Again, we're all hardwired to experience this. As we feel nervous, as we feel scared, as we feel threatened in some way, these chemicals are automatically flowing through our bodies. It's not necessarily a pleasant cocktail. The specific chemicals, if you want me to get really sciencey on you here, are epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol. Those cocktails together, or those chemicals together, create that fight, flight, or freeze response. To give you a little bit of information on what those might look like, so if you're in that fight mode, you might find yourself crying a lot. You might find your hands in fists. You might have a desire to stomp, kick, or smash things. In other words, you're feeling anger or irritability, a loss of control. If you're in that flight mode, you might feel restless. You might feel more anxious. You might have more movement, a lot of pacing, kind of moving around, fidgety. If you're in that freeze mode, you might be feeling stuck in some part of your body. You might be holding your breath. You might have this sense of dread or just this heart-pounding experience of, what the heck, man, right? Again, we don't have a roadmap for this, so we're all feeling this. These symptoms that you see on the screen under fight, flight, and freeze, if you really look closely at those first 3 slides that I shared, all of those are captured in some way on those first 3 slides. Again, normalizing that experience that we're all feeling these things, and we might be moving through them at different paces. We might be feeling freeze mode on one day, fight in another day. That's common. That's normal. Any uncertain or unusual situation is going to trigger these responses for you. To talk specifically about the stress response and how we get to that fight, flight, or freeze mode, you have a situation. You're presented with some kind of person or circumstance that your brain automatically, unconsciously, without your intervention, perceives in some way. There's some kind of response that your brain is making. It's a very primitive response. Again, if you want the whole science behind it, this is happening in your amygdala in the brain, which is very, very primitive function within our brain, or feature within our brain. So our brain, the amygdala specifically, experiences that situation, has some type of response to that, and we automatically have some thoughts in regards to the situation. And so to use this pandemic as an example, so the situation is the pandemic. We're faced with this unknown, uncertain virus. which is creating either thoughts or responses within our body. So we might be having thoughts of, oh gosh, I'm going to die. Oh gosh, this is taking over the world, etc. And we have some kind of emotional or physical response to that. Sudden sense of dread, this fear, this anxiety, anger, like, man, my rights and my freedoms are being taken away, right? And so our brain automatically is feeling all of these things, triggering those experiences. Is anybody familiar with the concept of cognitive behavioral therapy? Perhaps you are, perhaps you're not. But cognitive behavioral therapy, essentially the premise behind that modality of treatment is recognizing that situation and being able to shut down the amygdala and basically engage our thinking brain, and so that we can look at a situation objectively and rationally. Again, the amygdala is a very primitive function in our brain, and it's not always rational. And so the idea behind cognitive behavioral therapy is that we're faced with some type of situation, and we're immediately able to click in our thinking brain so that we can get a different response and a different emotion. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through as well. But essentially, with cognitive behavioral therapy, if you can change your immediate thought or response to a situation like this pandemic, you're going to experience a very different experience. Can I use that? You'll have a different result. And so if you can recognize it and change your thoughts, kind of like I mentioned on one of the previous slides, instead of feeling trapped at home, if you can change the language to I'm safe at home, or I'm home with my loved ones, I'm keeping my family close, things of that nature, you're going to get a different emotional response. You might feel a little bit more security. You might feel a little bit more safety, rather than that sense of uncertainty and fear. And so you might be sitting there saying, if we're hardwired to feel and react in unhealthy ways, then we have no control over it, right? So what are some of the things, again, I'm going to throw it out to y'all, what are some things that you think you can do in this moment to react or control in a different way? And so again, if we're hardwired, we have no control, right? What are some of the things you think you can control in this unusual environment? Don't be shy now. Focus on the things you can control, sure. Can you share a little bit more, anything specific? Sure, you can create a new routine. Many of us, again, being outside of a typical routine, we can create a new routine. We can exercise, we can do projects, we can take up some hobbies. Some of us don't have time for all of those things, but there are ways to incorporate those into our day-to-day or our new routine. Are there any other things that you think we can control in this environment? I'll help the group out here and move to the next slide. So can we change the situation that we're in? In some ways, absolutely. We can implement some of those things that we just talked about, creating a new routine, engaging in exercise or projects or hobbies. We can find new ways to keep in touch with people. There's lots of different ways that we can change the situation. While we can't control the pandemic itself, while we can't control what the government shares with us in terms of how we should be reacting to the situation, we can modify our specific situation. We can modify the way that we manage our time. We can modify the way that we communicate with other people. We can modify the situation by taking time out. We can recognize that, you know what, I can't possibly do all of the things that I'm being asked to do right now, and we can prioritize. We can make adjustments to that schedule. We can change our thinking in regards to the pandemic. Again, we already kind of talked about it a little bit. Changing just your language in a few small ways can create a different outcome. You can have a positive outlook. That can be hard to maintain in a time like this when you're feeling very uncertain. But to look for some of those positive things around you can help you feel a little bit better. You can have some realistic beliefs and expectations. I'm going to throw it out there real quick. How many of you are trying to manage all of the things right now? You're trying to work from home. You're trying to homeschool the children. You're trying to parent the children. You're trying to stay connected with colleagues. You're trying to stay connected with friends. You're trying to clean the house and do all of these things. It's not possible to do all of those things and do them effectively and in a healthy way. So you can change your thinking about that. You don't have to have these high expectations on yourself because nobody else is putting them there. So you can say to yourself, you know what? It's okay to let whatever go. I can let go of doing the dishes today so that I can spend more time with my family, things of that nature. Just making small changes in the way that you think can help you respond very differently and maintain your mental wellness during this time frame. You can also change your response. You can put into effect some of the things that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. You can take up a new project or do some exercises to help release some positive and healthy endorphins, which make you feel good. Lots of opportunity within these three areas of changing the situation, changing your thinking, and changing your response. Oftentimes in these types of situations, we're told how we need to respond or what we should be thinking about it. Going back to the news and those scary things that are being reported, we don't have to subscribe to that. We can change our own responses to help us feel more confident and comfortable in this uncertain environment. And again, the screen that you're looking at right now, the change would do you good with those three areas, this comes right back to cognitive behavioral therapy. If you can intervene at any point to that stressful situation, whether that's changing the situation, changing your thinking, or changing your response, you're going to feel less depression, less anxiety, less uncertainty, because now you're taking control of some key pieces that help keep your emotional responses in check. So how do we thrive in this environment? It's our new normal. There's been situations in our past where we've dealt with difficult situations, and this is an opportunity for us to do new things that help us respond differently. So the first suggestion I have for you is stick to a routine. If you're currently working from home and you're rolling out of bed at 10 o'clock in the morning and you're doing this and you're doing that, running around with the kids, doing different things with the pets, change the routine. If it makes sense for you to get up early, do work for an hour, then interact with the children for an hour, and then go for a walk for a half hour, whatever it is, stick to a routine that can help you manage this uncertain environment. Many of us don't have the opportunity to go into our offices and do the work that we normally do, but we can recreate some of that in our home. Again, remembering that it's not healthy or helpful for us to think that we can do all of the things. Drop some things off your routine. Every employer in America is familiar with the idea right now that there's no way any employee can do 8 hours of work in their home environment when there's all these other distractions. But build a routine around those distractions so that you have time for those things as well as the things that you need to do. Dress for the social life you want, not the social life you have. Get up in the morning, take your shower. If you're a female or male, put on your makeup, right? Do the things that help you feel good about you. Get out of your sweatpants, put on a nice pair of clothes, put on a dress, put on a button-down shirt. I won't show you what I've got from here down right now, but I do have the button up on top because that makes me feel better. However, the bottom half is a little bit more comfortable. Dress for the social life you want. If you stick around in your hoodie and your sweatpants, of course, you're going to feel a lot less comfortable in the environment. Can't stress it enough. Get out and move for at least 30 minutes per day. Whatever routine you create for yourself, build in time to get out and move for at least 30 minutes. Any type of activity, even if it's just walking for 30 minutes around the block, through your neighborhood, through the woods, whatever, releases endorphins, the positive endorphins, serotonin and norepinephrine, which are our happy chemicals. Think of those as the pills that you swallow. It takes 30 minutes to help you feel better. Releasing that serotonin and norepinephrine, again, those are our happy chemicals. The more we move, the more of those we release, which makes it easier for us to manage our emotional responses. Also, reach out to others. We can be feeling very isolated at this point. Some of us might be living alone. Some of us might be living with family members teenage children, maybe not interacting so much with us. Reach out to others. Do that in electronic means. It's not the same. I get that. But at least having that connection with other people for at least 15 to 20 minutes per day, up to 30 minutes, can help us feel a lot better. Part of connecting with other people is it allows us to normalize our experience. As we're talking about what's happening for us, we might be getting the response from the other person, oh yeah, I'm feeling that same way. Or this is what I tried in terms of getting around that. So reach out to those other people. Give people the benefit of the doubt. We're all experiencing a new normal. We're all experiencing many of those same reactions that I covered on the first 3 slides. Give people the benefit of the doubt. When they're snapping at you, give them a wide berth. Recognize it's not me that they're mad at. They're mad at the situation. Help them calm down if you feel so apt to do so. But give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes situations like this can bring out the best in people. Sometimes it can bring out the worst. And the worst generally comes because a person doesn't know how to handle or maintain themselves in a situation like this. I can't stress it enough. Lower your expectations for yourself and for others. Don't expect that you're going to accomplish all of the things. It's not possible. And you're oftentimes the only one putting that expectation on yourself. Recognize that you're feeling all of the things that we've already talked about. People around you are experiencing those as well. Don't expect that people and yourself are going to be able to accomplish all of those things. I would love to see a show of hands. It's kind of hard to see on the screen here how many are trying to balance working. Maybe you're still going to the office. Maybe you still have to homeschool the children. Maybe you still have to maintain your household, all of those things, and you're really struggling to maintain those things. Are there some things, I challenge you, are there some things in that day-to-day that you're expecting yourself to accomplish that maybe you can let go of? For example, talking with a client the other day, she has 3 children, all 3 are in school. She does not work, so she has that going for her. But she felt that with her school, and now mind you, all of her children are in elementary school, but she was getting emails from the primary teacher of these are the things that need to be done. She's getting information from the gym teacher, these things need to be done. From the music teacher, these things need to be done. From the art teacher, these things need to be done. I was like, how do you even know where to focus your energy? And she said, I don't. I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I don't even know who to respond to. And so basically the way we work that is like, are your kids exercising every day? Are they moving? Well, yeah, they're doing those things. Are they listening to music? Are they producing music? Yeah, they're doing those things. Then focus on that primary teacher who's reinforcing math and writing skills. Focus your energy there because those other things are coming naturally. So don't feel like you have to put that pressure on yourself to set aside 30 minutes to work specifically on gym class, or 30 minutes for music, or 30 minutes for art. You don't have that time. You're trying to manage 3 different children, 3 different teachers. Do what's within your realm of possibility. Do the most important things because the other things are coming naturally. You don't need to spend specific time on those. Any comments or questions to this point before I move to another set of things that we can do? I will move to the next slide. Feel free to throw something in the chat or speak up if you've got something to add to those. I strongly encourage you during this time frame to limit your social and news media coverage of COVID-19. As Katrina mentioned early on in our session, the news is reporting a lot of scary, negative stuff that we can easily buy into, right? If we limit our consumption of that information, we're likely to feel a little bit better. We're likely to be able to maintain our mental wellness in better ways or healthier ways. That's not to say that you shouldn't check in with the news, see what's going on, see what's being reported, but limit your consumption of that information. And so, personal example, when this pandemic started, every time the news was on, I found myself like fully engaged in it, like, oh man, this is awful, what are we gonna do? And really buying into all of that stuff. So I'd watch the news in the morning, I'd watch the news at lunchtime, I'd watch the news when we got home. By the way, I don't know how many of you watch news at night, but you've got the 5, the 5:30, the 6 o'clock news, then you've got the national news. Like literally, I was sitting there watching all of that. And it wasn't healthy. Once I recognized, man, I don't need to be consuming all of this. There's other ways to look at the situation. And I limited myself to one of the news reports in the evening, which was generally the national news. I felt a lot better. I wasn't fully engaged in it. And actually, we had such a beautiful weekend weather-wise, I didn't turn on the news at all. And Monday morning rolled around and we turned on the news, drinking our coffee, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah, right, COVID-19 is still going on. I'd kind of forgotten about it because we got engaged in doing other things. And so there are ways to limit your consumption, which will help you feel better. Notice the good in the world. There is a lot of good stuff happening around us right now. Again, if we're engaged in the local news or national news or even social media, we're not seeing a whole lot of that. But if we step back from those things, we might be able to notice some of the good things. And I'll circle back to that here in a few minutes to have you kind of help me and help the group recognize some of the good things that are going on. Did somebody chime in there for a second? No? In this environment, find something that you can control and control the heck out of it. If you're out of work, find a project at home, such as cleaning out a closet or cleaning the basement, anything to give you a sense of purpose and allow you to focus your energy on something. If you're working, find some things within your position that you can do. And I'll give an example of myself. Although I continue to come into the office every day and visit with clients via telehealth, there's not a lot going on. And so outside of meeting with clients, I can get a little bored. And so one of the things that I've done within my position is take on this role of creating webinars for our EAP contracts, but also reaching out to our contracts to see how they're doing, seeing if there's things that they need specifically. And I've made it my personal mission to be more in charge and more in control of those things. Got a response from a participant here that says, yesterday I rearranged 2 rooms and got rid of a lot of old toys. Made me feel accomplished. Absolutely. Control the heck out of that. That's phenomenal. That's a great example of a project or something that you can engage in to help yourself feel a little bit better. Takes your mind off all the other things going on, and it brings a sense of organization to your home, which can feel pretty good. Same thing with the work environment. Lots of different things that you can do there. Be creative. Reach out for help. Some of the things that we're talking about today, it might be hard for you to push yourself in those directions to do those things, and that's okay. Reach out for professional help if you need it, or just reach out to family and friends. Again, people around us have some really great ideas, and if we allow ourselves to be just a little bit vulnerable and say, I'm really struggling in this environment, this isn't working for me, and we start to have that conversation, we can start to get the support from other people and some creative ways to manage and navigate this new normal. Chunk your time. This is a really big concept in that there's several ways to do this. This goes back a little bit to routine, okay? So let's say you're working from home. To expect that you're gonna get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, log into your computer and do 8 hours of online meetings and engagement with customers or whatever it may be, that's unrealistic. The chances of that happening and being successful are pretty slim. So chunk your time. Get up at 8 o'clock. Do an hour of work. If your work permits, do an hour of work. Take a 30-minute break. Do an hour of work, take a 30-minute break, but chunk your time. For some of us, with the way that we're feeling, an hour might be too long. Maybe we can only focus on the next 5 minutes. That's okay. Chunk that next 5 minutes and focus on whatever the heck that is for those 5 minutes, whether that's rearranging a room, changing the furniture, doing a load of laundry, whatever, but focus on that next 5 minutes. Coming back to that cognitive behavioral therapy, if we're thinking too far ahead, we're creating anxiety for ourselves. Don't allow yourself to run with those crazy ideas. Chunk your time. If you find yourself thinking too far ahead, drop back. What can I focus on for the next 5 minutes that's going to be distracting so that I'm not thinking about where we're going to be in a week or where we're going to be in a month? Find what works for you. Chunking works different for every person. You've got to make it work in your environment. Remind yourself that this is temporary. Again, if we're buying into everything the news media and social media is telling us, we're likely to believe this is our new normal forever. While things might look a little different over the next several months or even year or 18 months, this is temporary. We will find a new normal. We will find a new routine. We will find ways to adapt and adjust to this, just like we have multiple times throughout our history, maybe not us as individuals, but our ancestors and before us. As humans, we're very adaptable. And again, while it seems uncertain right now, we're already starting to find some new ways of controlling our environment and being able to move forward out of that. Again, the way we're living today is temporary. We will find a new way to get through this. Big reminder for all of those who need it, in this environment, be kind to yourself and others. And what I mean by being kind to yourself, that doesn't necessarily mean rewarding yourself with a snack. I mean, that's going to lead to that weight gain we talked about in one of the first 3 slides. But talk kindly to yourself. Again, it's not realistic to expect that you can do all of the things right now in this environment. If you make a mistake, or if you're having a bad day, or you've yelled at the kids, or you've kicked the dog, hopefully you haven't done that, but if you've done any of those things, don't beat yourself up for it. Recognize, oh yeah, I did that because I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling uncertain, I'm feeling trapped, I'm feeling like I need to get out of the house. Recognize why you're feeling a certain way and talk kindly to yourself. Say, you know what? It's okay. It's not possible to do all of the things. You can go for a walk. You're going to feel better. Be kind to yourself. Allow others that same opportunity as well. When you recognize that somebody's having a bad day, reach out, connect with them, let them know that they're doing great things. Point out the positives that are happening in their world as well as the world around them. Find the humor. Find time to laugh. Laughter also releases endorphins, which are those positive chemicals in our body. The more times that we can laugh in a day, the more we're going to feel better. Is the situation that we're in funny? No, it's not. But there are ways to find the humor. There are ways to laugh. And my husband and I do it every day. In some regards, it's joking about the environment that we're in because it makes us feel a little bit better. That doesn't mean that we're downplaying the severity of what's happening around us, but we're at least able to joke about it and find some levity in the darkness around us. Lastly, be creative. This is a time that creativity can really help you move beyond those feelings of isolation and uncertainty. Find new ways to connect with others. Actually, my college roommates, I don't know which one came up with it, but it was a great idea. We started playing Cards Against Humanity. It was 2 weekends ago. We started playing it. Of course, there was a cocktail or two involved, but that's okay. But we started to play a game that we loved playing while we were in college. And so we started playing that through virtual means, and how much fun we've had. We've connected in ways that we haven't connected in years, and it was really a lot of fun and really reminded me in particular, this is temporary. There's going to be ways that we're able to connect with each other moving forward. Throwing it back out to y'all. Are there other things or other ways that you've found to be able to adapt to this environment that's helped you keep some sanity? Feel free to unmute yourselves or type, whichever's comfortable for you. I think talking with one another and getting your perspectives and what's worked for you can be helpful for the group. Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the participants is saying, it sounds silly, but getting enough sleep is helpful. Absolutely, and you're right. I didn't mention those things, but nutrition and a healthy sleep routine will help significantly in being able to manage your mental wellness. If we're feeling tired, if we're feeling exhausted, it's much, much harder to control those emotions. So building into your routine a healthy sleep habit can be very supportive for thriving in this environment. Thank you for that. That's excellent. What else? What else have you found to be helpful in navigating this new environment that we're all experiencing? Anybody? Yeah, not feeling guilty if I have to use screen time for my kids so I can get work done. Absolutely. Just so when oftentimes, sorry, tripping over my tongue here. Oftentimes when we're feeling guilt, it's because we feel like we have to be giving into somebody else or we should be doing something else. Should is a cognitive distortion. That's an expectation that maybe somebody else is putting on us, a societal construct that we need to be doing work or whatever it may be. But when we're feeling that guilt, tap into the specific thoughts going through your brain. What is it that you're telling yourself and challenge that guilt? If the kids need to be on a tablet so that you can engage in an important work meeting, by all means, do it. Do whatever you have to do and really challenge that sense of guilt that you have. Because again, coming back to the fact that you can't do all of the things. You can't be on an important meeting for work and have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old right in your ear or trying to get on your lap. It doesn't work very well. And so handing off a tablet to a child while you're getting that work done, that's okay. In this environment, that's needed. That is absolutely necessary. Hopefully you can balance that with some one-on-one time with the child or 2-on-1 time later with the child, whatever it may be, but don't feel guilty about handing over a screen if needed. My husband and I just went for a drive and got ice cream cones on Saturday. Felt good to get out. Absolutely. Change the routine. Get out of the house. If we buy too much into the media that we can obviously consume too much of, we're told that we really shouldn't be leaving our houses. While that's true in a lot of ways, there's nothing that prevents us from doing solitary activities, going for ice cream. Ice cream's a takeout. If restaurants are open, ice cream is also one of those things. And who doesn't love ice cream? Get out, do something that's not normal for you right now. And actually, with that, I want to drop back to the routine thing. One of my clients shared with me, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. She was really struggling with this idea of working from home. She was getting up, doing her shower, and going right to work. But she didn't feel like there was any separation between home life and work life. And so what she ended up doing was getting up a little bit earlier, getting in the shower, drinking her coffee, doing the newspaper routine. But then she went and got in her car and would commute to work. And her commute consisted of driving around to look at scenery that she finds pleasant and enjoyable. Then she would come back home from that commute and start getting to work. And she looked at that as, this is me driving to work, got home, and would immediately start her work. For her, that worked. Oh, by the way, she would do that at the end of the day as well to signify work is over, now I'm transitioning to home life. And I thought it was brilliant. It was a great idea that worked for her. May not work for everybody, but it could work. Getting a comment, I'm not thriving, covering our faces and avoiding others is not how humans are supposed to interact. Going out and seeing this is depressing. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to take away from that because yes, my experience has been as I go to the grocery store, there's really not a whole lot of eye contact with people, which is not our norm. And so that can be depressing. But you know what? Even behind our masks, people can see our smiles through our eyes. And so make that eye connection with somebody else and smile. might help them to feel better, might help you as well. It's also an opportunity to use your words to greet somebody. While they might not see your specific facial expression behind your mask, at least greeting them, saying, hey, how are you doing today? Or something along that line can really be helpful. This is difficult, and definitely covering our faces isn't normal for us as human beings. There are ways around that. And I'm not going to take away from the idea that this is depressing. It is depressing, but there are different ways that we can manage that and modify the environment. Again, going out of our ways to greet somebody can be helpful to improving our mood and the mood of somebody else. Other thoughts or comments that anybody would like to share about what's been helpful?
Spending time in nature has been helpful for me, and having the opportunity to enjoy the flowers and the leaves coming out and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Nature is a healer in and of itself. And if we can take the time to enjoy that beauty, it's extremely helpful. And so a tip that I might offer, if you're choosing to go for a walk or you're going out into nature in some way, practice a basic skill of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a concept that allows us to shut our brains off and teach our brain what we want it to focus on when we want to focus on it. Again, keeping in mind that during this environment, many of us are having racing thoughts, we're thinking too far ahead, we're thinking back to how life used to be, etc. All of those thoughts are going to create these negative responses in us. If you're heading out into nature, make it a point to really observe the beauty. Really focus your brain, and as I don't know if you can tell, I keep kind of looking over my computer because I'm staring directly out a window to a white birch tree that's starting to get some buds on it, and I'm starting to see the leaves form. And I can really focus my energy on that and that growth of this beautiful time of year. So if you're going to get out and do some things and get into nature, focus your brain on that. Notice the beauty of the flowers. Spring is a lovely time in upstate New York. Embrace it. Recognize and notice the beautiful things going on around us. Some other comments from participants: dropping off care packages to other porches. Yes, absolutely. A number of my friends, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the idea of getting iced, but cocktails are being dropped off to friends, and we were even victims of this once. But what a great idea to lift the spirits of another person and actually make them post a video of those care packages as they're opening those things so that you can see the joy and partake in that with them. So dropping off care packages can help you feel good as well as help the other person feel good. Another comment from a participant: I've been trying to go on walks with my kids when it is nice enough to be outside. Yes, we've had some up and down weather. I was close with my kids before, but now we're getting closer than ever. How beautiful is that? That's one of those positive things that we can take away. Some of us might be finding that our kids are more annoying than we thought, but others of us might be really enjoying and embracing that time with our children. What a great way to help them navigate this uncertain environment and create a new sense of closeness and normalcy within our family bond. That's wonderful. I know several of my clients with their children are engaging in board games and just doing things that they hadn't had time to do before. So thank you for sharing that. And recognizing that some of those dynamics and relationships that we have could be becoming stronger and closer during this environment. Anything from anybody else? Moving forward just slightly. Again, I can't stress this enough either. This is temporary. Things might look a little different for us on the other end of this, but we will adapt. The wearing of the masks, unfortunately, I think that's with us for a little while. So finding ways to adjust to that and still connect with other people can be super helpful, but we will adapt to this. We have hundreds of times throughout our history as human beings. We will adapt, we will get through this, and we will perhaps be a lot stronger on the other side of it. Recognizing that there is a lot of positive stuff that's going on around us and within our environments. So this is temporary, we will get through. If some of what you heard today sounds interesting or sounds like something you'd like to know a little bit more about, or maybe you're finding yourself really struggling and not being able to move towards some of the things that we talked about today, and you're looking for a little additional help, here at Clinical Associates, we are open, we are doing business. It's via telehealth at this point, but we do also have clients coming into our building. So if you've been holding off reaching out because I don't want to do this telehealth thing, I want to actually see a real live human being, let us know that. Give us a call. We're happy to meet with you. Many of our clinicians are working from home, so coming in to meet with some of them isn't a possibility. But there are others of us that are on site, and we're happy to have you in our space if that's comfortable for you. If you decide that you're comfortable with telehealth, it's audio and visual, live, so we're interacting just like we are right now, except that I'm able to see your faces and you're able to see mine, but we're actually able to connect in real time. You can visit our website at clinicalassociates.org or give us a call to schedule an appointment if you'd like a little bit more information or would just like some additional tips on getting through this stressful time. Many of you might have employee assistance programs through your employer. Check with your HR folks to see if you do have an employee assistance program. We at Clinical Associates do manage contracts for local employees. I'm not sure all the organizations represented in today's webinar, but we may be the provider of your EAP. Do reach out to us. Through EAP programs, you're entitled to generally free counseling sessions to help get you through this hump. If you're an employer and you're in a position to provide benefits for your employees, you don't have an employee assistance program, keep Clinical Associates in mind. We're happy to have a conversation with you about how we might be able to assist you and your employees, not only through this difficult time, but in the future as well. That's all I have for you today. Are there any burning questions, comments, things that we didn't discuss, things that you were hoping to get out of today's session that we didn't talk about? I hope that this opportunity provided you with some good information to help you maybe approach this environment a little bit differently, whether from an emotional aspect or from a physical aspect, doing something different. If you've been thinking, man, I need to do something different, but didn't have any ideas on how to do it different, hopefully some of the information that was provided for you today will be helpful to you moving forward. Again, my name is Jennifer. If you feel like you want a little bit more information and want to touch base with me specifically, feel free to reach out to Clinical Associates and they will put you in touch with me. I wish you all well. This is certainly an uncomfortable environment to navigate, but hopefully some of the things we've talked about can help you do that more successfully. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to all who participated today and joined us. We truly appreciate everyone's time and hope everyone has a nice day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody.